When I was in grad school, I was taking a linguistic course, and one of the assignments that we had is to look for animal communication, how the animals communicate with each other. Doing my little research, I found a research conducted in Puerto Rico about the Puerto Rican parrot that were in captivity, how they developed a dialect, and then how difficult it was going to be for them to adapt to the wild once they were set free. Obviously,
So they had a different dialect than the ones
yes.
that were in the wild.
Researcher,
Wow.
Daniel, noticed.
Hold on, we just kind of lost your audio. You just got really quiet. Really. No, now I can hardly hear you at all.
Okay, let me take the phone. Okay, I'm back. I'm so sorry. What was the last thing that I said?
No, that's all right. The last thing you were talking about, how they had a different dialect.
Yes. The scientist Tania Martinez, she noticed that the cotorra, the parrots in captivity, sounded different from the ones in the wild. So then they started this research study, and that's how they found out that the parrots in captivity sounded different from the ones in the wild. So they were worried that once they were set free, how were they going to adapt and communicate, So obviously I found that fascinating. One, because of the Puerto Rican parrot is in Puerto Rico, of course. Two, they had developed a dialect, so that's when I start thinking about my own son, in his bilingual journey, and all the other children, who pick up dialects depending on where they live, and they pick up accents. And I found it fascinating. I said to myself, this is a perfect children's story, It is just perfect, I came across it, then my light bulb went on, and then I signed up for a creative course at New Mexico State University, and I was able to develop and elaborate Coco, la cotorra puertorriqueña.
That is so neat, because it is such a beautiful, it's a great story, but like you said, it's such a great metaphor for thinking about bilingual kids, which you really bring out in the story about how the bird, the main character, discovers that being able to speak both of these dialects and understand humans is really a superpower. Can you talk more about that?
As an advocate of bilingualism, I also understand that children learning a language, they develop accents, dialects, and normally sound different than someone who's a native speaker. So I wanted Coco to feel special, that he sounded different, he spoke different, but he was able to still communicate with the parrots in captivity and also communicate with the parrots in the wild, although he sounded different, and that happens a lot with our children. My son, he's a 13-year-old bilingual, but he has an accent and he sounds different speaking Spanish than, of course, me when I'm speaking in Spanish. And I want children who read this book not to feel ashamed or embarrassed because they sound different than their peers, So that's why I made bilingualism a superpower.
I love that. And in the end, because he has that superpower, he saves the day. Yeah, I love that. And so when you were coming up in this story, why was it so special to you to have it set in Puerto Rico?
Because the Puerto Rican parrot is endemic to Puerto Rico. You cannot find that parrot anywhere else. And it is the first research study conducted of parrots who have developed a dialect, So obviously, it was just perfect. It was just like everything just fell on my lap. I'm like, oh my goodness, yes, that's why it's set in Puerto Rico. So then I tied in the conservation efforts. I tied in the parrot recovery program. So not only is it about bilingualism, it's also about protecting and taking care of el Yunque, our tropical rainforest, conservation efforts to save the Puerto Rican parrot, because it is an endangered species.
Yeah, for those of you who haven't visited Frances's Instagram feed, you really should. And you have an account
Coco
just for the Coco. Because you did this really awesome photo shoot in El Yunque, the national forest where this is set, and got to take these pictures. That must
Yes,
have been
yes.
pretty
I
awesome.
have my niece. She's my social media manager for Coco la Cotorra, and she's the one who actually came up with the idea of going to El Yunque. Obviously, I had hopes to come across a parrot, but I had to, for that to happen, I had to hike a lot, and we were short on time. So we did take some shots, by the towers, the waterfalls, and it was just lovely. And of course, I was walking around everywhere with my book of Coco. Mhm.
Yeah, and you got to, I know that was really important for you to, you were pushing to get this book done and published before you went. So, well, so you could take it, but it's also so you could
Yes,
show it to
yes.
your mom,
But
right?
my mom was sneaky. She went ahead and ordered the book before I showed up in Puerto Rico with the book. She was so excited. So she actually got it a week before. And she also, when I was taking the course, the creative course, she read the rough draft and she loved it. So she already knew what it was about. But it's very different when she's reading the draft to actually read the book and you have all the illustrations. So it just comes to life.
Which, yeah, they really are wonderful illustrations. And I know you've done like coloring pages and things. I was looking right before we went on, I was like, wait, I have the one my daughter colored in, but I couldn't find it in time. But you do have really wonderful coloring
Thank
pages to go with
you.
it. Yeah, I wanted to try and tie in your background in teaching because I know that all informed. And like you said, you did this when this idea came to you when you were doing your master's, and how the how picture books can help kids not just with their identity but also about learning a language. Like this book right now is only
Yes,
in
it
Spanish,
is,
isn't that
and
right?
it's only in Spanish,
Yeah.
and it's geared towards children grades 3 to 5th, and that are advanced readers,
Okay.
So, but it is a perfect picture book for parents and educators and caregivers to read to the children.
And so how did your like your research tie into this book? I mean, not just specifically that one, but just like, do you have any advice for people who are teaching their kids
Well,
another
I think
language?
the number one, and I say it in my own experience, and because I also have parents that sometimes get a little bit antsy because they want their children to become bilingual right away. And the number one word right
Right.
now that I can think of is patience. You have to have patience. Language learning is a marathon. It is not a sprint, and it is a long-term commitment. I remember when I started with my son when he was 4 years old. Obviously, I wanted him to be bilingual right away, but that wasn't going to happen. Impossible, to happen,
Right.
And it took years of commitment, of hard work, and reading lots of books in Spanish, not Coco, obviously, but we have a large library of books in Spanish that I read to him often and every day. Spanish language songs, cartoons. So I think it's just a combination of many things. And the most important part is that the parents commit to this language learning because it's not going to take a couple of months. It's not going to take 1 or 2 years. It took my son years. He's 13 years old now. And even so, sometimes he finds himself that he doesn't know what to say or how to say it in Spanish because it's a continuous learning process. Language learning is continuous all the time. And parents and myself, we have to be patient. Sometimes we get frustrated. We want like, oh no, I want him to be bilingual. And another thing is too, although they may understand, they'll have a hard time trying to say the words in Spanish, and then that's when parents and caregivers get impatient. But I think the key word right now is that you have to be patient, and it's just look at it this way: it's not a I mean, it's a marathon, not a sprint. Long term. So
Right. Yeah, I think one thing that surprised me is that we thought that just by speaking Spanish around our kids, they would just pick it up naturally. But we're immersed in this English environment, especially once they start school and they have little playmates. Then, I mean, I ran across some, I write down like quotes for my kids, and I ran across some old ones from when they were really little, and realized how much Spanish words they were using then. And as they get older, they tend to
oh my
switch more
goodness,
to
yes.
English. Yeah. Yeah, and so how did you have a hard time finding Spanish books that were really appropriate for your son? I mean, was that part of the motivation behind writing your book, was just wanting to have more really good
Yes.
Spanish language books out there?
That was almost 10, 11 years ago. There weren't as many Spanish books as they are now. It's still a
Right.
lower percentage, what we have in Spanish language books, but at least it's a lot more than years ago. And what I would do is
Right.
actually, when I visited Puerto Rico, I would pick up books from over there.
Right.
I will ask my mom and my sisters, anytime you come across a book in Spanish, doesn't matter the level, send it to me. So that's how I actually built our home library, but it was hard. It was hard because there aren't any. And then finding authentic Spanish language books, it's even harder because you will find a lot of translated books, and sometimes the translations are not correct. But it's it was hard. It's easier now, so I would encourage parents or anyone, educators, just do your research. You will find a much more wider and bigger selection than we had years ago.
Yeah, and like you said, also finding those authentic books. I mean, I imagine finding ones that are actually set in Puerto Rico. I mean, that's an even smaller subset
Exactly.
of one's trying to find, or Puerto
and
Rican
talking
authors,
about that, there are a lot of books about a coqui, the tiny little tree frog. We have so many, and right now, the last couple of years, we even have more books, but even back then, there weren't many. And then about the Puerto Rican parrot, there really isn't. I think there's one, Parrots Over Puerto Rico, and it's in English, and it's more information than like a story or picture book style. They have that one, and I think there's another one, Parrots as well, but it's from a oh my goodness, I can't remember. So it's just like 2 books from the Puerto Rican parrot, and then now I have Coco, a cotorra puertorriqueña. So yeah, but we have a lot of books about children's book about coqui set in Puerto Rico.
And do you think you're going to write more?
Yes, because Coco is going to go on some adventures. So I'm already thinking about the book number 2 for the series. But right now, I want to focus on getting the book out in English. So it's already translated. I'm working on the editing process. So hopefully soon we'll have Coco, the Puerto Rican parrot, in English for children, obviously, who don't speak Spanish or read Spanish, so they can read about his story.
I interviewed another author, Maria, who also writes bilingual stories, and I was interested to ask her, so which do you write in first? Is it English or Spanish, and then go back and forth? And so I'm curious for you. I know this book is in Spanish now, but did it come to you in Spanish?
No.
Was it kind of a mix? And did you do the
it was
English
in Spanish
translation?
from the get-go. So I read the research study, and all I thought was in Espanol, so I just wanted to do it in Spanish. And then I wrote it in Spanish. I had a friend of mine, Mariana Llanos, edit the Spanish version. I translated it into English, and I had another friend who translated it edited in English. That's Monica, from Mami Maestra. So I have both. So, but initially the book was always thought about in Spanish.
Do you think that you would have what's your opinion of books that have like the side by side? Do you think you would do that, or you want to have one in Spanish?
I thought about doing a side by side, but because it's such a long story, it would be just too much. And that's initially what my first intention. I wanted to do it bilingual, both at the same time, but the storyline is just too long, so it just wouldn't fit. It wouldn't look right.
And why did you decide to do this age group?
Not specifically thought about the age group. I just started writing, because it just came from my heart. I'm like, okay, this is Coco, and I just type, and then I thought about, I said, wow, this, because when I first wrote it, it was like essay type, for my creative class course, but then I had to tweak it to make it into picture book. And talking with Mariana, we're talking about, so what age group would this fit? Would this be a good fit for? And we came to the conclusion from third to fifth graders, that are advanced readers.
Which is great, because I actually this is just from my own experience. I don't know if this is, I haven't looked at statistics, but it seems like there are not as many books for that age group. It seems like there are a lot of early picture books, that are Spanish or that are bilingual, but not so much for older kids. Do you find that's true? Like is it hard for you to find things for your son now that he's
for
older?
the teenage group? That's much harder. Much harder, at least authentic. I have found a lot of translated books, which at least helps for now, But yeah, I think the picture books for the little ones and the board book for the little ones, there's plenty of those. The third to fifth grade age group is harder. The teenagers, it's even harder, so.
Right. Yeah, I would imagine, especially for them too, because then by then they have like their own things that they like to read, so not just finding one, but finding one that's something they would actually think is interesting.
Yeah, because it was easier when my son was little. I said, oh, let's go read this book, and he'll just sit in my lap, yay. But I show him a book now, he's like, I don't think so, I'm like, okay. So I'm trying to focus with him on getting graphic novels in Spanish, so it's easier, to read rather than giving him a chapter book in Spanish, which is harder.
Right. Yeah, the graphic novels are nice because they can kind of help you along if there's something you don't quite understand.
Yeah, most definitely.
Joining us, we're coming up on time. Is there any final
No,
thoughts
I just
you'd
want
like
to say thank you for the opportunity to be here. I'm so excited about Coco, and I really do enjoy many people. I really do hope that many people enjoy Coco as much as I enjoyed writing the book as well. And thank you.
If you haven't read it, be sure to check it out. It's a really wonderful story. Yeah. I can't wait. I didn't know, or I didn't realize it was going to be a series. That's great.
Yeah, because like I mentioned, when I wrote it for my class, my creative course in New Mexico State University, it's essay type, so it was a lot longer. So for this picture book, I had to cut a couple of sections out that I'm going to use for part 2.
Right. Yeah. Nice. So when do you think, I know you said you're focusing on the first book and getting it in English. When do you think we can see book 2? I'm hoping
by the end of the year, this year. So we'll see, Wow. But I want to focus first on getting out the English version.
Yes, which just came out, right?
December, it was just in Spanish, December, and I was hoping to have the English now for February, but it's not looking like it's going to be in February, but at least in the next 2 or 3 months. Yeah.
Oh, that's so exciting.
Thank
you, and congratulations. It is really wonderful. Like I said, you're a person of so many talents. Like when you said you were writing a book, I was like, what else? What can she not do? I've done all of this. So.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And if you haven't checked out our book, be sure to go do that.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.